Hey guys, welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here, and today we're going to be looking at the presidential race in the state of Texas and analyze the latest results in polling and other things. So, right now we have an interesting thing. So, currently Joe Biden is leading in polls in Texas by 0.7%. This is amazing news for the Democratic Party as they put another state pretty good into their column. I mean, generally speaking, again, we're still far out from the election, so things can definitely change. But as of today, we have the most consistent Biden lead in Texas. So, generally speaking, over the last couple of months, I mean, since the pandemic, when these polls were first started, after Joe Biden won the presumptive nomination, we've seen Trump leading by around two or 3 points, and there was a point where the race became very close and narrow. Trump started to lead again, and then Joe Biden narrowly led for 2 days, and then now we have Joe Biden consistently leading for 3 days, every day, gaining a little bit more margins. So, right now, the Republican Party must be freaking out because they lose Texas, their chances at the presidency are not looking too great. So right now, the average has Joe Biden ahead by 0.8%, so essentially almost a point, which is pretty good considering that the Democrats lost there in 2016 by, if I'm correct, like 7 or 9 points. I have to check. I think I have the results here. So yeah, it actually was 9 points. So it was a big loss for the Democrats in 2016. So if they're able to pull this off, that's going to show that demographics are on their hand, are helping them, and all these different things are truly helping them. So let's look at these polls. So on July 28th, the Morning Consult reported a net gain for Biden, so of 9 points, because the last poll they released, so they released both of these polls together. So May 17th and July 17th. May 17th, so a month ago, Trump was leading in Texas by 7%, according to the Morning Consult. Now Biden's leading by 2%, which is amazing for the Democratic parties, and big gains in poll numbers are usually not seen this quickly, especially in a state where historically the trends have been showing it to be a Republican state. However, it's been trending a lot more Democratic. And I think that's not the only poll. We have consistently close polls or for Biden. I mean, this one's a partisan poll because it has an asterisk. Quinnipiac, this is one of the better polls, +1 for Biden. Gravis, that's another poll that is an insider poll, so +2 for Trump. YouGov had +1 for Trump, so very close. This one's not such a good pollster. They're a B/C. The University of Texas at Tyler, +5 for Biden, which is really good. So we can keep on going with the polls but the most accurate polls, I guess, would be the ones that we have the latest. So the latest polls show the situation and how it is. So could this actually happen, or is this kind of impossible? So I feel like this actually could happen, and Joe Biden has consistently led. Now, is this going to be one of these races that usually flip-flops, where throughout election day, or election season rather, both political parties start flip-flopping who's leading in the state of Texas? That might be the fact. But if a lot of polls are consistently showing Biden ahead, that is good. So, we're going to take a look, first of all, and compare it to 2016 this time around. So, in 2016, as we can see here, there actually wasn't that much polling beforehand. I'm guessing because there isn't too much before like September, when people realized it actually could get closer. So, generally speaking, so the first poll we had was around +6 for Trump, +7 for Trump. It ended up being +9. So I mean, that was a state that in 2016 people did not know much about of being a swing state, because it really wasn't a swing state. It was more of a competitive state. However, I mean, the Democrats really improved in the state of Texas from 2016. And just off of many different things, I mean, Texas is fastly trending blue. This might be the final nail in the coffin for the Republican Party in Texas. It's going to be pretty hard winning elections without Texas. So, let's take a look at our trends with the state of Texas with our election results. So, I'm going to use 2 Senate races to compare the results. So, I'm using a 2014 Texas Senate race between John Cornyn, who's actually running for re-election this time around, and Alamil. So she's Alamil. I don't know if it's he or she, but essentially what's going on here. So I want you to take a look at this map and compare it to the 2018 Senate map. Ted Cruz against O'Rourke. So the CNN website looks a lot different. But however, let's just take a look at it. So first I want you to focus on this belt right here. The southern part of the state of Texas. What is something well we noticed? Lot more blue. So this is kind of where most of the Latinos, or actually not most, a big majority of them, or at least a big chunk of them live in Texas. So generally speaking, the southern tip has a lot more Latinos, and somewhat of a bigger population. And we're seeing here, again, remember, Beto O'Rourke was a candidate that appealed to rural voters, so that's another thing to consider. However, Democrats have been making gains. So just there, I mean, that's huge gains there. And just in the general election, the results were actually John Cornyn won by 62 to 34%. Democrats were able to get that down to 1 point. We went from a 25% margin almost, or 20% margin. Yeah, a little bit, like 25% margin almost. And they got it down to less than 1 or 2%, so 1.6%, which, if you ask me, in just 4 years, that is amazing that they've been able to push down those margins. But who are the most responsible for these changes? I mean, what counties? Travis County, so if I'm correct, that must be Austin, Texas. So we saw that county flipped, or actually went a little bit more solid for the Democrats. They got the suburbs, and they got Houston. That's a big city that Democrats did not win before. Now they're leading there. San Antonio, Bexar County, they are starting to lead there. Fort Worth and Dallas counties, they actually won both of them. So this map looks amazing for the Democrats in Texas. Realistically, all they had to do is probably outperformed a little bit here. In Houston, Austin win Fort Worth County by a larger margin, and they should be set. The Democrats really don't have a hard path to victory in Texas. It's just going to take a lot of resources. So I would say that the polling right now has Biden leading, and I think that might be true. Now, I mean, for the polling to keep up and a Biden lead to keep up, they're just going to have to invest a lot of money into it. And it's not looking good for the Republican Party considering this map. This graph is provided by the Secretary of State of Texas. And the Texas Democratic Party also provided. So it might be somewhat biased, but I think these actually are the numbers because the Texas Secretary of State provided it. So this map shows the projected, so the lines in the back, projected voting numbers for each political party. So it's expected to grow a lot faster for the Democrats. Democrats were expected to take over primary turnout over the Republicans in around 2021. What did they do? 2022, they took over of the voter turnout in the primaries, which is pretty interesting. So, I mean, it could be said that just because there was an incumbent running in for re-election in the Republican side, not many voters went to vote, but still very, very big numbers for the Democrats. 2 million people was the turnout for the Democrats, which is pretty good. I mean, considering that just in 2014, so 6 years ago, they only had less than almost like 600,000. So that is a huge gain for the Democratic Party, and this could just be one of the omens and trends that shows Democrats will someday get close to or even win in Texas, and it might be in 2020. Just looking at this graph, I mean, we've seen how the election has shifted in favor of Biden in Texas. And these graphs, I mean, this graph just really shows what Democrats can do in Texas. O'Rourke was a good candidate for Texas, so I mean, that's another thing to consider. But since Biden is leading in the polls consistently for a couple days, it is still in the margin of error, so that's another thing to consider. But I mean, he is leading in Texas. That's a big thing in the political world. And essentially, since Democrats have been getting support in Fort Worth and Dallas, in Austin, in Houston, in San Antonio, in all these southern counties that have a lot of voters, this is going to help out the Democrats. And a Trump victory in Texas is falling away each and every day. At this point in time, Biden has a pretty somewhat large chance of winning Texas, comparatively to where past Democrats in the past couple of elections. This state literally went from being 15 points for Mitt Romney to possibly flipping in 8 years later for the Democratic Party. So very interesting, and we're going to look into this race as we get more information. The trends have clearly shown how the Democrats have been getting support, and demographical trends is really what it is that is helping them there. And it's also a lot of Democratic voters who, before they might have said, why should I go out to vote if my vote's not going to matter? I guess a lot of people thought that way, and then it ended up being that there was a point where they realized, look, if we actually go out and vote, we could actually get close and even win. So that is what is going on in Texas. Texas is going to be interesting, so I'm going to keep analyzing this. So answering 538's question, who's ahead in Texas? It's Biden. So we're going to see at the end of the day what's going to happen here when it comes to election day. And essentially right now, we are probably going to be able to say that we can currently predict that it's a little hard to predict because it's so close, but I would say that a Biden victory is not out of the realm here. So Biden should be proud, and the Trump campaign should be looking for backup plans at this point. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you really did enjoy it, please remember to like and subscribe, and I would really appreciate it. And there's many cool content coming up on the channel, so please make sure to turn on your post notifications so you don't miss it. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.